Hey, welcome to Photoshop. Chances are if you're here and you're watching this, then you already know what Photoshop is, but if not, then Photoshop's an image editing software where you can do some pretty ridiculous things to photographs. You can also design logos and banners and create artwork with it as well. And there's so many different tools and processes and filters and effects, which is brilliant. But if you're brand new to it, then it can get quite overwhelming pretty quickly. So the idea of this video is just to introduce you to how Photoshop works, explain some of the main tools and effects that you can get started creating things. Before we do anything though, we need to set up a new document. You can do this by heading over to File, up there in the top left, and clicking New, or you can hold in Control and N. This brings up a little box with a few options, and I want to go in a little bit of detail about all of these bits here. So first you'll be asked what you want to title the document. And I usually just leave this blank and keep it as untitled 1 until I save the file. You're next asked which preset you'd like to use. Now if you've copied an image or you've taken a screenshot, this is going to be set to clipboard, and that'll have the dimensions of either the image that you've copied or your screen size if you've taken a screenshot. If you're working with something that you want to print out physically, and then there's the presets for that as well. So for example, I work with A3 artwork quite a lot, so I'd go to international paper, click A3 from the drop down, but you can change the dimensions yourself. You'll notice here that the size is displayed in millimeters, so it's a physical size. But if we're making things like social media content or website banners or logos that we don't want to print out physically, we'll want to work digitally, and that's where pixels come in. So if you're working on a Facebook banner, for example, there's a set recommended banner size for those banners, and you'd simply just type in those boxes and make sure that it's set to pixels. I tend to work mainly on social media content, and as most posts go to Instagram, keep things square. I try to work with high file sizes, so where possible I go for 3000 by 3000 pixels. The resolution, that's how detailed your image is, so it's how many pixels there are to an inch. So if you're working on a physical print, then you'll typically work around 300 resolution, and that's what most printers these days will print at. Next up is your colour mode. This also depends on what your outcome is. So RGB stands for red, green and blue, which is what makes up the colours in screens and monitors. So you'll want this option if you're working on things for social media or websites. If we click the drop down, you've got grayscale, which is essentially black and white images, or we've got CMYK. And if you've used screen printing before, you'll know what this is. So CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow and key means black. It's the colour format for most professional printers, and it's also used in screen printing. So if you're working on something that's going to be physical, you can work in this format. The reason that there's these different formats is because screens don't display colours the same way that your printer will print them. So if you print an RGB colour, then the colours will look slightly different to what they look like on the screen. So it's really just an attempt at getting sort of colour accuracy for your images. The background content we're going to keep as white, so when we've got our dimensions in and we click OK, you don't have to worry about this. Then we've got our document set up and we've got a white background. Right, so the first thing is over here you've got the layers panel, and this background here, that's the first layer that we've got. So Photoshop works with layers, and as you create intricate pieces of artwork and things, you'll have more and more layers that build up here. So the way that it works, it's kind of like a hierarchy. So you can imagine like tracing paper as each layer, and the one that's on top is the one that you can see most clearly. It's the on top of the image basically. The one down below is the one that's at the back of the image. You can make a new layer by clicking here, and then you've got layer 1. You'll see this little padlock next to the background layer. I'm just going to delete that for now. Which means if we go up to here to the move tool, we can't actually move this layer because it's locked. So the way we get around that is to double click on this little padlock. That'll say you want to create a new layer. We're just going to call that background just to keep things simple. And there we go. Now we can use this move tool. We can move the square around. So you see this little checkered pattern here. That means that everything behind this square is transparent. So that when you save a file that supports transparency, like a PNG file, there won't actually be anything here, it'll just be blank. I'll just drag that back in there. Right, for the next tools, we're going to create a new layer. So you just go down to this little button here, and that makes a layer 1. You'll see the checkered thing there as well. That means that the layer is transparent. And we'll start with the brush tool. So that's this guy here. If you go up to here, you've got your different brushes. You can change the size of it, and you can change the hardness of it. The hardness, so basically, if we make that a little bit bigger, there, that's the hard brush, and you can turn down the hardness to make it softer brush, or you can just click on the soft brush, like that. So we'll work with the hard brush. You can also turn up and down the size of the brush by using the brackets. So I guess the open bracket is the smaller one and the closed bracket is the bigger one. So we'll create some lines, just drag and draw. If you're using a drawing tablet, you can make the line so that it works with pen pressure. You just go over to here to this guy and it's shape dynamics. I haven't got a drawing tablet plugged in, but you'd go to pen pressure and have a mess around with these until it's like a like eases into the line, so it gets chubby in the middle and skinny at the side. We'll turn that off for now. So once you've got that, you'll see that it's also showing you like a little preview of what the layer looks like. So if you can hide it, you click this little eye. It's just to give you an indication of what that layer looks like. So after we've done some drawing, if you make a mistake, you can undo it. So you go to Edit and Undo Brush Tool, or you can use Ctrl and Z, but you can only use it once. So if I press Ctrl and Z again, it's just going to bring it back. So what we want to do then, if we want to undo everything, is step backwards. So that's Ctrl, Alt and Z, and then you can undo everything. We'll bring that back again. We'll just make another scribble. Right, the select tools. So you can right click and you've got more options here, but we're going to go with the rectangular one. You've got an elliptical one as well, so you can make squares, circles. We're going to go with the rectangular one. You just click and drag the boxes. If you hold down Shift, it'll keep it as a square as well. And when you're working with the circle, if you hold down the Shift as well, that'll make like a perfect circle for you. So when you've selected something, it'll come up with this little flashing lines around the box. That means that we can only change what is inside this box and on this layer. So for example, if you wanted to use this tool, which is the eraser tool, we'll bump up that size a little bit. We can only get rid of what is inside that box. And again, if we want to change the colour, we click this guy up here, change it to maybe it's blue, and we can only draw inside this box. Okay. More selecting stuff. We've got the lasso tool. So if you've got like a, I don't know how to describe it, a non-uniform shape, I guess. If you've got something you can draw around, then you use the lasso tool. You just click and drag around. And when you're using these tools, always go back to the start, and it'll just sort of jump back to where it is. So everything inside this selection, you can now draw in or erase, just like with a square selection, or you can erase it as well. Next up, we've got the magnetic lasso is pretty handy. So to deselect that, we're going to hold in Control and press D. That'll get rid of the selection. The magnetic one, this is good if you're working on with a mouse and you've got some straight lines and stuff that you want to cut out around. So you click, and then you just drag, and you click to sort of make an anchor point, and it'll sort of cling to whatever it thinks you're trying to select. So you don't have to be spot on, I could even wibble this a little bit and it'll still just cling to that blue there. So again, as with the other one, we're going to go back to the start, and then we've got that selected, so we can only work inside there again. We'll deselect that. Now we've got the magic wand, and we're going to turn on contiguous, and that's going to pick up that one area of the orange. And if we turn off contiguous, it will select all of the orange on the layer. If you've got something that's not perfectly the same colour, you can turn the tolerance up and down. So 50 is quite a high tolerance, so say we had like a gradient, it would pick up more than just this orange, it'd pick up like a very similar orange. We could turn it down to like 10 and it'd pick up mainly just this orange. Next up we've got the quick selection tool, and this one's quite handy. It's kind of like the magnetic one, but a little bit smarter. So it clings to an area that it thinks you're trying to select, so when you let go it'll just cling to the edges. So this is handy if you've got lots of little bits that you're trying to select. Select like that, blue. Yep. So again, you can only work inside the selection. That's those two. We've got the crop tool. So you can either make the image size smaller or the canvas smaller, or you can even make it bigger, and it'll just fill it with a transparent background. And you can click the tick to finalise that. We've got the eyedropper tool, I think it's called. I usually call it a colour picker tool because that's pretty much what it does. So you can see that we've selected green over here. We can hold down, or we don't have to on this. You've got the colour picker selected, you can just tap and it'll select the orange. If you're using a brush or the pen picker tool, you can hold down Alt and it will just bring it up really quickly. So you can change the colours quickly that way. So if there's a colour that you need to match exactly on that's in the image already, that's a really quick way of doing it. We've got the clone stamp tool. I think that deserves its own video really, but I'll quickly show you what it does. So you start with, you hold down Alt and it'll bring up this little crosshair and start where you want to start, whatever you want to clone. So we'll click there, we'll move it across. You can make the brush bigger and smaller as well with this, and then when we start, it'll start cloning up that area on the same layer like that. But after you've clicked, that's kind of locked in, so it'll always take this into consideration. So the start of the image is there. So we couldn't just copy that over again. It just jumped to wherever it should be from where it's locked to, sort of tethered to. So if we want it to clone again, we'd have to click Alt and do it again like that. The eraser tool we've been through. Just get rid of that bit. Also, while you're drawing and stuff, if you hold down Shift, so we'll click there, we'll hold down Shift and we'll go down, and it'll put it in a perfect line for you. You can go sideways as well. The paint bucket tool, you just pick your colour. Let's go with purple, and it'll fill an area. So we'll go with that. It's filled all of the area that it can get to. If we turn off contiguous, resolve, click inside there, then it'll fill the gaps that it can't get to as well. So any space that matches where you click, it'll fill that as well. We'll Control-Z and undo that. Looks a little bit garish. We've got the gradient tool, and there's loads of gradients that you can pick. We'll go with the basic one, which is the colour that we've selected, to white. You can click and you can drag like that, or you can hold down Shift and it'll do it either at a 45-degree angle or along the top there horizontally, or you can go down like that. We'll take it down here and it makes a gradient like that. So if you're making a gradient and stuff like that and you want to keep this, you'd just make a new layer and then it'd be separate to what you've already done, and you could just hide the layer and then you've got that layer to work with there. We've got the smudge tool. So because we've got this layer selected and it's hidden, it's saying that we can't do anything because the layer's hidden. So we'll just click on that layer, then we can start smudging this around. So it's going to take wherever you start clicking. So if we click on the white and then drag down, it'll smudge the white down. But if we click on the orange and smudge the orange, it'll move the orange around. We've got blur and sharpen as well. They pretty much do exactly what they say they do. They'll blur and they'll sharpen. It's more obvious when you're working with things like photographs, what those two do. You've got dodge, burn and sponge. They do different things as well. So the burn is really good for if you're working with artwork and you want to add shadows. The burn tool is a really good way to do that. If you want to add highlights, I think it's the sponge tool. Nope. Is it the dodge tool? It's the dodge tool. So highlights, that's an easy way to do highlights. You've got the pen tool. That's kind of another selection thing, or you can turn it into like a mask, which is like an advanced thing to do. You've got your text tool. So you'd click and drag to create the area that you want to add the text. You choose the colour up here. We'll go with black, and you can choose your font from all of the fonts. It'll give you like a little indication of what the font's going to look like, and that's how you choose how big you want the font to be. So usually there's a flashing line. There isn't, because we're using 500, which is very, very big. So we'll go down there and you can see the flashing line now. So we'll just type font. You can Control and Alt to select it all. And you can either click one of the preset ones, or you can just wait until this box is selected, and you can push up and down on your keyboard and it'll make it bigger or smaller. You can choose these guys as well, and you can set the alignment like that. As well, you've got this little handy guy, and you can mess around with sort of how tall and how wide everything is. You can choose what much space you want between the letters, and there's all the good stuff there. We'll come back to that later on in a different video. You've got your shapes. So you've got the ellipse, the rectangle, the rounded rectangle, which is just obviously the rectangle with rounded sides, polygons, lines, and custom shape tool. So you click on that, you choose your shape. There's a few. You can download more as well. So the shape tool, that creates it's called a smart layer. So we'll just draw out a rectangle. So there's this little box here that's a shape layer, a smart layer. So we can't erase that because it's set as essentially what it is. We can transform it. You hold down Control and T. You can change the size of it. You can rotate it if you want to. While you transform things as well, if you make a mistake and you don't like how it's stuck, you can just press this little one here, the circle with the line through. That sends it back to how it was. Also with the shape tool, so you've got this black outline here. That's called the stroke. That's up here. You can hide that if you want to, or you can change the colour to like a preset colour, or click this and you can choose your own colour like that. The purple fill, you can change that. You can get rid of it if you want to. Have a transparent box. You can fill it with your own colour there or there. We'll hide that. So if we hide the stroke as well, we'll get rid of that. We'll still have this little outline. That's not actually there. That's just showing you where that shape is filling. So the space where that shape is. So if we click off that, it's going to hide it completely, and then we click back on it and it'll show you where that shape exists. So we can go back in there and we can fill it and add colours and stuff again. Once you rasterize it, you can rub out sections and you can draw on it and stuff, but you can't change it as quickly as you can there for the fill and the stroke, because it'll treat it as just its own image. We can rasterize it by either can either click where it isn't going to let us click, and it'll say, do you want to rasterize the shape? Or we can right click on it and rasterize it that way. So after that we go back to the shape tool. If we choose something else, it's not going to affect this because it's not a smart object anymore. But we can rub it out, and we can draw over it as well. Okay, that's pretty much all of the tools along this side anyway. That's the main ones. Let's have a look at layer effects. So you've got different options. We're going to stick with, let's hide that and hide that. We'll change that and let it fill the screen again. So this is still a font layer. You can see the T, so we can still go back in there and customize this. Let's set it as a blue, and then we can see some different effects happening. So we'll make that a little bit bigger. We can transform it like that, or we can select it all and change it there. So you'll see that that's a different number than it used to be. When we increased it, because it's a smart layer and it's a font layer, it's changed it itself there. So either while it's a font layer, or even when you rasterize it as well, you can go into effects and you can choose one of these, or you can just click on blending options. It brings up a big window asking you what you want to do with it. So let's go for things like a drop shadow. Okay, so that's brought up a little shadow around it. And if we click on drop shadow, we can mess around with that a little bit, or a lot. So the distance, that's how far it is from the sample or the base of the layer. The spread, I think that's how much of its allocated space it fills, and the size, it adds like a fade around it. You've got different modes. You can change the colour as well, so if you want a red drop shadow, you can have a red drop shadow. Stroke, like we did with the square, and that adds an outline around it. You can increase the size of it as well, so if you need to quickly outline font, that's a good way to do it. You can go inside as well, which doesn't look excellent, so stick to outside for that thing. You've got inner shadows, so you can mess around with that. Also, while you're doing this, make sure you're not just clicking on them, because obviously we've selected that now, but we're still actually editing the inner shadow and we don't have that selected, so just pay close attention to that. We've got different pattern overlays that we can do as well. Photoshop comes with a few, or you can add your own. You can change the size of that as well, and the opacity, so the opacity makes it more transparent, so you can have some sort of subtle textures and things like that on it. And I think that's pretty much it for the basic tools of Photoshop. If there's anything else you want me to go through, just ask in the comments, I guess, and I'll get back to you when I can. And we'll build on this anyway. So we didn't make anything really from this video, but in the next ones we'll start actually creating things, and I'll show you how to do that stuff too. Thanks for watching. If you learned anything, hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.